Morning to you. Taliban fighters have taken Jalalabad, Afghanistan's fifth largest city, and now have control of all the major cities apart from the capital, Kabul. Well, these pictures have just come in from Jalalabad. The Taliban said to have taken the city without a fight. It's because of scenes like this that the UK is joining other nations trying to bring its citizens home. The United States has started flying out embassy staff. 5,000 troops are being used for the operation. For ordinary Afghans, however, the worry is what Taliban rule will mean, because the fall of Kabul is seen by many as inevitable. So let's see how the Taliban have advanced. And this first map shows Afghanistan in April, when the US started their withdrawal. In just 4 months, they've advanced rapidly towards the capital, Kabul. The government area is shrinking in the face of the offensive, with militants taking control of Logar province yesterday. Also yesterday, 3 more key areas fell to Taliban control: the city of Mazar-e-Sharif, the Laghman province and Daykundi province. And this morning, Jalalabad in the east of Afghanistan. Taliban fighters are now just miles from Kabul, from where our chief correspondent Stuart Ramsey reports.
It's almost unheard of to see this number of Afghan special forces in one place at one time. They're regrouping in Kabul. They're well trained and heavily armed. Together, they're a formidable force. But they're desperately needed in the capital. The Taliban are just miles away now. Steadily, the British and American soldiers, and crucially their equipment, are arriving at Kabul. Transporter planes land and crisscross the runways, moving towards the military section of the airport complex. Vitally important, helicopter gunships are being prepared for imminent deployment to protect the evacuation of foreign nationals and the Afghan workers employed here for 2 decades. The 600 British soldiers from the 16th Air Assault Brigade have been loaded onto planes and will immediately secure the airport and prepare to assist in the withdrawal on arrival. It's hoped these British and American troops will cause the Taliban to hesitate in attacking. Afghanistan's President Ashraf Ghani is quickly losing his grip here. Many thought he would stand down, but he's told the nation he intends to restore order.
Our dear country Afghanistan is in serious danger of instability due to the war imposed on us. I'm aware of the situation in Afghanistan. In the current situation, the reintegration of the security and defence forces is our priority, and serious measures are being taken in this regard.
In the midst of tightening security, the government held hours of talks discussing a Taliban offer of a ceasefire and an interim government. It came to nothing.
Well, both the government and the Taliban have rejected previous proposals that could have brought about a ceasefire and some form of power sharing. The latest proposal from the Taliban involved the president standing down, which he's rejected. But the fact that he said he's going to go after the Taliban can only mean bad news for Kabul, and more importantly for the people who live here.
Many we spoke to said all they wanted was peace, and some said they'd accept the Taliban, especially if they showed they had changed.
Right now it's fine. The people is good with them. They said everyone can go to school, the girls, the boys. Life is normal, but in the future we don't know.
Right.
Yes, but recently life has become difficult for people. People worried about how the way Taliban treat us before and now. It's a little different.
The question is, can you trust them to be nice?
Well, we just want peace.
But the early indicators of a reformed Taliban aren't looking good. In Kandahar, they've taken over the radio station. It's now Sharia radio. Women know they'll suffer the most. Only a few are so defiant.
Are you scared now about...
I'm not scared. If I'm a girl, I know that Taliban is fighting in Maidan Shahar. That's the entry gate of Kabul. They are here. I'm not afraid of them. We are not the people who will, go back to the dark era. I'm a girl and I don't care about anyone. Not Pakistan, not America, nobody else. I'm here even today. If they kill me, if they identify me, I will not care about them. I will not care about them. What should I be scared of? This is my homeland, my land.
Change is coming here now, whatever the president says. The Taliban's inexorable advance on Kabul is almost complete. The coalition forces will likely only delay the inevitable. Stuart Ramsey, Sky News, Kabul.
Let's talk to our Foreign Affairs editor, Deborah Haynes. And it certainly seems to be almost inevitable, Deborah, that Kabul will fall at some point pretty soon. Just while the international community at the moment just seems to be looking on.
Absolutely. And I mean, the fall of Jalalabad today, this morning, is kind of the final hurdle before Kabul. Kabul now the only major city in Afghanistan under government control. And that follows, it's only a week, really. It's been just over a week that these provincial capital after provincial capital has fallen, many barely with a fight, including Jalalabad. The reports from there suggesting that the government there just allowed the Taliban to take over, and images emerging from the city, which is in the east of the country, a key gateway between Pakistan and Afghanistan, which is now under Taliban control. Same too with Mazar-e-Sharif, which is that northern hub that fell to the Taliban yesterday. There had been fighting around the outskirts, but once they got into the city, it does seem that those in charge just succumbed to the inevitable Taliban advance, which is what most are expecting is going to happen with Kabul. Kabul, obviously much, much different, given the huge international, well, what had been a huge international presence is still a relatively large international presence. And President Joe Biden, who is the man who has ordered this withdrawal, he was handed the cards left for him by President Trump, who struck the deal with the Taliban last year and set that timetable in motion for American troops to leave the country. President Biden finally issued a statement last night in which he really doubled down on his plan to withdraw American troops from the country, but he is sending in additional forces to withdraw this diplomatic presence as well. And that was not the initial plan. The hope had been for the US and the UK to be able to retain embassies in the capital. Clearly that has changed given the events of the last few days. But there are going to be additional American troops, 5,000 in total, including 1,000 that were already in Kabul, now helping with the evacuation. The embassy staff are starting to be moved out of the country. The UK is also sending in 600 troops to help evacuate its diplomats and other dependents and people with links to the UK. Reports today that the ambassador is going to be leaving the country. And again, that is very different. The plan had been for the British Embassy to stay functioning, and the fallback plan that an embassy of some sort would function from the airport. But that's clearly all been changing because of this Taliban advance that, as Stuart Ramsey was reporting, it does feel inevitable. The big question, though, is what is going to happen in Kabul. Joe Biden, in his statement last night, did set a red line, really, saying to the Taliban that any attacks on American forces would be met with a swift and strong response. They've clearly got additional forces now to be able to deliver that response. So will the Taliban heed that warning? Will they wait until this evacuation is over? Or will they continue with the push straight away and risk a direct confrontation with US and potentially British forces? OK, Deborah, for now, thank you. Now, hundreds of people have been killed in Haiti after a major earthquake hit the west of the country. 304 people are confirmed dead, 1,800 injured, and the authorities say hundreds more are missing. The earthquake was even more powerful than the one that devastated the country in 2010, killing more than 200,000 people. The epicentre of the quake was about 90 miles west of the capital, Port-au-Prince. Our US correspondent Martha Kellner reports.
The people of Haiti have dealt with similar devastation, but it doesn't lessen the horror nor the panic. As water flows through the streets, people ask desperately where it's coming from. The threat of a tsunami looming. The earthquake struck at breakfast time, buildings folding in on themselves with little warning. The epicentre was 75 miles from the capital Port-au-Prince, and many of these areas are cut off from rescue teams. People dig through rubble with garden spades and their bare hands, following the screams of family and neighbours. On this occasion, they're successful, rescuing a woman and young boy, despite the danger of more aftershocks. But hundreds of people are confirmed to have died, and most expect that number will continue to rise.
Haiti is a poor country, as you know it does, but we never prepared for anything happen, even is a earthquake or whatever it is.
Haiti was still recovering from the 2010 earthquake, which took more than 200,000 lives. Scarred, impoverished and angry at a government which has failed to rebuild. But nature has no respect for how much the people of this country have suffered. Along the same fault line, a sheikh even more powerful than the one which caused such loss. And this is a country already on its knees, reeling from the assassination of its president last month, overtaken in some areas by violent gangs.
Are you concerned about a potential humanitarian crisis, given how precarious the situation was in Haiti even before this earthquake?
Yeah, it's unfolding right before our eyes. I'm very concerned. It's been a very difficult 2.5 years for the people of Haiti because of political unrest, because of COVID, and now this.
The full extent of the destruction and death is still unknown because many of the communities affected are rural and hard to reach. Haiti is also in the path of Tropical Storm Grace, which could hamper rescue efforts. For the people of this island, the onslaught of bad fortune continues. Martha Kellner, Sky News.
Well, the women's #2 tennis player Naomi Osaka has promised to donate all the prize money from her next tournament to the relief efforts in Haiti. Her father is Haitian and she said in a tweet, "I know our ancestors' blood is strong, we'll keep rising." A man who tried to help one of the Plymouth shooting victims has told Sky News at the moment he came face to face with a gunman. Bert Pinkerton was captured on a car dash cam trying to comfort Kate Shepherd moments after she'd been shot and says he now wishes he'd been able to tackle Jake Davison. He's been talking to Ashna Huranag.
These are Kate Shepherd's final moments. She has just been shot by Jake Davison. The figure comforting her is a stranger who happened to be walking by. This was Bert Pinkerton.
I've got the corner of her jacket to stop air getting out and put it across and then put pressure on. And then I was holding her hand and speaking to her all the time.
What were you saying to her?
Help is on its way, help is on its way. You're all right, I'm here with you. But she had her eyes closed. She was sort of trying to breathe.
Bert says he acted instinctively. The moment keeps replaying in his head, but the haunting figure of Davison also scars his memory.
Just blank expression, mate. Just staring through you, basically, He was dressed in black, a black t-shirt, a big black beard, black curly hair, walking he was on patrol like a soldier with a gun pointing down the gat and walking.
For 6 minutes on Thursday night, Davison roamed his neighbourhood, shooting dead 5 people, including his mother and a little girl.
Kate Shepherd was Jake Davison's last victim before he turned the gun on himself, just beyond that cordon. The community here have been left reeling from the events of the last few days. They are desperate to understand how this happened and to heal.
The tributes continue to build, including from the Home Secretary, who on a visit yesterday spoke to locals and police. A minute's silence at Plymouth Argyle's first home match of the season also allowed for quiet reflection. The events of that day weigh heavily on this city, particularly for this Samaritan, who has a memory of that evening he wants to erase, but there are reminders of the horrors right on his doorstep. Ashna Huranag, Sky News in Plymouth.
4 people are in hospital with suspected gun wounds after reports of a drive-by shooting in Camden, North London. It took place near Regent's Park just after 10 last night. The condition of 4 people hurt isn't yet known. The area is cordoned off. Police have been given increased stop and search powers across Camden overnight. 20 people have died after a fuel tanker exploded in northern Lebanon, according to the Red Cross there. The charity said its teams recovered bodies from the site of the explosion and evacuated 79 people who were injured or suffered burns in the blast. The Ivory Coast has recorded its first case of Ebola in 25 years. It was detected in an 18-year-old travelling from Guinea, which suffered a small outbreak earlier in the year. The health minister said it was an isolated case and the patient is being treated in intensive care. At least 44 people are confirmed dead after flash flooding in Turkey. Severe flooding and mudslides hit the Black Sea region on Wednesday, destroying buildings, sweeping away cars and cutting off power. But there are fears the number of dead could rise as the search for missing people continues. Spain set a new provisional heat record as searing temperatures gripped the Med. A high of 47.2 Celsius recorded in the city of Montoro in the south of the country yesterday. In Portugal, several districts are on a state of alert because of the increased risk of wildfires. And let's have a look at the live impact of climate change. The top line here showing how the UK's power is produced. 31% renewables, 28% nuclear. That's the bulk of it so far, but still 41% fossil fuels, most of which is gas. The global warming since 1880, that's when records began, 1.23 degrees. So that leaves, according to scientists, about 11 and a half years until we hit 1.5 degrees Celsius, which is the point of no return, according to them. And a lot of that, of course, down to CO2 emissions. You can see the total carbon dioxide emissions is almost 2.5 million tonnes. And all the very latest on the climate, of course, on our daily climate show here on Sky News every weekday at 6:30 and 9:30. Now, all 16 and 17-year-olds in England are to be offered a first COVID jab within the next 8 days, ready for the start of the academic year in September. Becky Cottrell's following this one for us this morning. So making that available to all in that age group. Do we know how many people are still unvaccinated from that age group?
Not as many as the government would like, basically. They were offered the jab earlier in the month, but the government has brought in that deadline of August 23rd in the hope that it will encourage all 16 and 17-year-olds to go and get a jab before they go back to school. The government wants August 23rd to be the deadline because that provides 2 weeks before the new term starts in September. There had been concern that with children going back to school, students going back to university, that could trigger an escalation in cases. Obviously, people over 18 have already been given their jab or offered their jab, but that is why the government has brought in this younger age group specifically to target the older school students. 16 to 17-year-olds, they can book an appointment through their GP or go to a walk-in centre. Currently, the advice is for them only to get 1 dose of the jab, not 2. That is being reviewed, though. Children between 12 and 15 who are clinically vulnerable or who live with someone who's clinically vulnerable, they are also being offered the jab, but no word yet on whether children more generally in those younger age groups will get the vaccine. It hasn't been ruled out yet, but it is not the current protocol. Obviously, all of this that I'm talking about applies to England, but there is a similar situation in Wales, Northern Ireland and Scotland. 16 to 17-year-olds being offered that jab and encouraged to get it before the new school term starts.
OK, Becky, thank you. Let's have a look at the latest COVID data for you. And there have been a further 29,520 cases in the last day. A further 93 people have died, which takes the total number of deaths now to 130,894. In terms of the vaccines, nearly 40,000 first doses were given in the last day, 166,000 second doses. 40.3 million people are now fully vaccinated. This is Sky News Breakfast. Let's see what the weather's going to do for you. Good morning, Joe. A bit of a mixed bag again?
It is, I'm afraid. It's really not looking very good, is it? Not the summer that we'd like to think we were going to have. But there is some hope in sight. It may turn a little bit warmer at the end of this coming week. But for the time being, we pick up this northwesterly flow, which is a little bit cool. Let's take a look.
Look forward to brighter skies. The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
Hello there, good morning to you. Well, today we've got this area of low pressure. It's just sitting over southwestern parts of Ireland, and it's throwing a lot of cloud and some patchy rain for these southern areas, also for parts of Wales and the southwest. Then we've got a secondary rain belt across northern parts of England. That's trying to work its way southwards, and then to the north of that, it's fresher, cooler, a mixture of sunny spells and scattered showers for much of Scotland and Northern Ireland through the course of the day. So really, we're looking at a fair amount of cloud across England and Wales. That's going to be giving us some patchy rain and drizzle here and there, perhaps some heavier rain over these northern areas. Best of the weather for parts of East Anglia and the far southeast, where we could see temperatures up to around 24, 25 degrees Celsius, 77 degrees Fahrenheit. It's still a notch down on yesterday. And then cooler and fresher in the north, those temperatures really mid to late teens. And through the course of the day, that patchy rain starts to clear away. It eventually gets away overnight, and we see some clear spells developing. But western areas will be cloudy tomorrow.
Jackie, thank you. Still to come for you this morning, the government's latest move to crack down on shark finning. Can you hear me now? Now, shark finning, that's the act of cutting off a shark's fin before throwing it back into the water, has received widespread condemnation for decades now, and it's prohibited in many waters around the world. The practice has been banned in the UK, but the government's going a step further and introducing new legislation to stop imports and exports of the fins from other countries. Well, let's talk to Ali Hood, Director of Conservation at the Shark Trust. Morning to you. I mean, what sort of difference will this make?
Well, we very much welcome this recent statement from DEFRA, which reinforces their commitment to shark conservation through this proposed prohibition in trade in detached shark fins. I mean, the fin trade has been a driver of decades of uncontrolled shark fishing, leading to the decline of many species. Oceanic sharks, for example, those on the high seas, like the blue shark in this footage, have declined by nearly 3/4 over the last 50 years, mainly due to uncontrolled fishing, driven historically by the fin trade. However, statistics now indicate a declining trend in this trade due to tighter regulations and consumer campaigns. Meanwhile, though, the trade in shark meat and other products is increasing, and hence the need to see the fin trade as an element of the wider issue of overfishing. So this move by the UK is a really important statement out to the wider global community.
I mean, just what sort of trade is there in shark fins in the UK? I mean, is there a lot of it coming to the UK?
So the UK fin trade is not immense in any way. However, this is an issue of strong principle. The UK has been a leader in a number of shark conservation issues, and to enable it to take a strong stance on the global stage, it's essential that we as a country are coming from a very strong position. So the UK is not only pledged to bring an end to the import and export of detached shark fins, but also to increase its engagement in high seas fisheries management, in wildlife instruments like CITES and CMS. And this is very much evident in the UK's current role as a champion in the North Atlantic of the short fin mako, a species that has clear scientific advice for a prohibition on retention in what's known as ICAT fisheries, but a position that's been stalled and blocked by the EU and the US. So the UK, along with other champion countries like Canada, is pushing for the strictest protection here. This is something it can do from its position as a strong shark champion across the board.
I mean, as we look at those pictures of traders sort of gathering and measuring shark fins, and I've got to ask the question: why on earth? I mean, what is the appeal of shark fin to people?
I mean, this is something that has a cultural basis. So you could ask that question about many products that are consumed in different countries around the world. I think the key thing here is that there has been, and there still is, a financial value attached to shark fin that is extremely high. And where there is a financial interest, then you're going to get to trade. Right.
But my understanding is there are like imports of things like shark fin soup and things into the UK. That will all stop as a result of this, will it?
So anything that includes a detached shark fin will cease once this legislation is in place. That ensures that any shark that enters the UK trade system with its fins still attached has come from a fishery that practices what's known as fins naturally attached. It's a far simpler sort of fisheries management to enforce. It increases the knowledge on that fishery. We can identify the sharks that are landed, and it is the correct step towards more sustainable fishing practices.
Ali, good to talk to you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, this is Sky News Breakfast. Let's have a look at the weather for you with Joe.
Look forward to brighter skies. The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
Hello there, good morning to you. Well, the weather's a little mixed to start the day. We've got an area of low pressure close to Ireland. That's throwing a lot of cloud and some patchy rain around. We've got a rain belt over northern parts of England, and then we've got showers over Scotland. So it's a kind of a three-way split today, but we should see some brightness, particularly down towards the southeast. The cloud extending across into parts of Wales and the southwest will eventually bring some patchy rain to central southern parts as well. Temperatures a little bit disappointing. We managed 26 yesterday. Today likely to be 24 or 25, but for many parts, particularly these northern areas, it's likely to be cooler temperatures in the late teens. And then through this evening and overnight, the area of low pressure drifts away to the near continent, so it takes a lot of the cloud with it and the patchy rain. So turning quite clear in places overnight. Still a few showers around and quite a bright start to Monday morning, but we're also going to see this northwesterly breeze setting in. This could be quite strong around the coast, so feeling cool there, but it's a cool direction and temperatures will be that bit lower as well. And through the course of the morning, western areas will tend to cloud up a little.
The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
Joe, thank you. Stay with us. We'll take you through the papers in a couple of minutes.
Did you know that drive... Did you... Did you know that driving us to school creates extra toxic air at drop-off and pick-up times?
Low pressure will move across the country over the next 24 hours and it'll leave us with quite a cool northwesterly breeze. As far as today's concerned, we're looking at large amounts of cloud, some outbreaks of rain and drizzle here and there, and bits and pieces of brightness. Where we do get some warmth, temperatures around 24, 25 degrees Celsius, a notch down on yesterday, whereas in the north we're looking in the late teens Celsius. In terms of the air quality, well, pollution levels will be low or very low over the next couple of days on account of the air coming from the Atlantic.
The Air Quality Report, sponsored by Philips Air Purifiers.
Time for the papers this morning with the broadcaster and author Gemma Forte and entrepreneur Kate Hardcastle. Morning, you two, once again. Gemma, let's kick straight off with the Sunday Times, should we? What are they saying about the WHO and China when it comes to the pandemic?
Well, this is a very long read. So if you're up and about this morning and you want to grab a cup of tea and read some amazing investigative journalism, I would thoroughly recommend this piece. The headline is China, the WHO, and the power grab that fueled a pandemic. And it's quite a disturbing read, really, brought to you by the same journalists who wrote the incredible scoop months ago about Boris Johnson missing all those COBRA meetings. And it really is very, very detailed. So essentially, when the SARS outbreak happened in 2003, China decided it didn't like the criticism that followed. It didn't accept the public humiliation, and they weren't going to allow it to happen again. So it appears that since then, they have severely compromised the independence and leadership of the WHO in terms of installing chosen candidates and definitely prioritising economic interests over halting the spread of this virus when it first started to emerge. So it's fairly sinister, to be honest with you. And they also sort of kept perpetuating false claims that the virus couldn't be spread to humans and so on. So, of course, this has meant that borders weren't closed as quickly as they should have been. Essentially, the world didn't have a heads up. When 4 million people have died since, this needs to be looked into. And, of course, going forward, you know, China represents other kinds of threats, cybersecurity and so on. So how does the world react? How do we deal with this? Certainly one would think that perhaps seeking future trade deals isn't the way forward. But how do you hold a regime like China to account? But it really is a fascinating read. Yeah, it sounds it. And as you say, it poses a lot of very big questions to which I'm quite sure people do not at this moment have answers. To the Independent, Kate, looking at, I mean, Haiti, what a time it's had over the last 11 years. I mean, now another earthquake.
And they've not recovered from the devastating 2010 earthquake either. And this is a place that is, as we know, struggling politically, financially, and they've seen homes destroyed again. People have died. The hospital's overwhelmed. This is just an incredibly sad piece of news, as we understand that 7.2 magnitude earthquake has made such impact of only 100 miles from the capital. And the Prime Minister there saying that it's been a creation of enormous damage. I think we can only just read this and try and understand just how a country trying to rebuild itself is once again set back, as well as dealing with the same issues it has for many years, economy particularly. Yeah. I mean, it's such a poor country, and to be dealing with this again, it's going to need a huge amount of international help. To the Sunday Express, Gemma, looking at a pandemic, but this one of anxiety.
Yes, that's right. It's almost a sort of concurrent pandemic that has been spreading, if you like. This piece takes, well, they keep citing this expert, John McPherson, and I'm not completely comfortable with some of the language that he uses, although he makes extraordinarily valid points. So he talks about a campaign of fear. He talks about brainwashing. Obviously, the government had to make some fairly hard-hitting messages hit home in order to curb the virus. And I've got a 16-year-old and a 14-year-old, and absolutely without a doubt, I know that them and their friends have suffered immensely. It is not natural to be cooped up in a house with your parents for a year or whatever. It just isn't. And the way that they've studied, etc. However, some have coped well, some haven't. Everybody's circumstances are different. And I think what is more helpful now is how can we now help them going forward to adapt again. And I think the positive news is that our brains are plastic. We have this plasticity. We are incredibly adaptive. Look how we as humans did adapt. Once we got our heads around the fact that this pandemic had happened, we got on with it. And now the world is opening up again and we're adapting again. So I don't think it's all doom and gloom. We just have to find ways to support them as much as possible and make sure, yes, that they're not terrified about going out now that the vaccine is working broadly. You know, I know there are still things to worry about to an extent, but I know that I'm trying to help my daughter sort of get back to normal life.
I mean, look, I may be totally wrong here, but when it comes to young people and anxiety, a lot of young people, suffer very genuinely from anxiety. But is there also that issue of people? You know, if you tell a youngster they're going to be stressed, they get stressed. Are we sort of feeding them a little bit?
But perhaps, you know, they have had these messages, as it says in the piece, about, you know, don't go near Granny, you'll kill her. You know, these are extraordinary things to be told as a young person, and they've taken it on. And I know earlier we were talking about exam results, and you said, Stephen, you know, your nephew, I think, had done extraordinarily well. And again, hand in hand with that, I was a bit against the kind of mode where the press were talking about results going through the roof and sort of almost intimating that exams are easier. They're not. I think this generation work harder than my peers did and do seem to take things more seriously and have more perhaps social justice and awareness of what's going on around the world. Perhaps that's because they're so plugged into their phones, I don't know. So yeah, anxiety, a really huge issue, as is eating disorders. That's been another pandemic. So we just have to now be really proactive and positive, actually. And rather than talking about scaremongering and all that stuff that sort of has happened, I think we need to be looking forward to help them through.
OK. Kate, what's going on with M&S in the Mail on Sunday?
Well, the Mail on Sunday aren't very happy that the rumours about M&S's Christmas advert are going to be that they feature, apparently, Marks & Spencer's advert features a woke activist. I'm just going to edge off that for a while because whatever you do for your Christmas campaign, M&S, do what you want. But I think this is an organisation that we love to talk about. The consumers love to write to me when I talk about the results at M&S. They care for them. They're a brand that's got a huge amount of affection still, just like John Lewis as well. But they're a brand that's been in trouble for many, many years. Wherever you go with the advertising here, I think this is an organisation that has consumers begging and pleading for it to return to its original values of value and quality. And I think when it has struggled so many years now for its fashion lines, for its financial figures, we've just seen a massive store closure programme. However much is invested in any tune of Christmas campaign, as I always say, the detail, the basics has to be there. So what I'd like to be reading about M&S, who've just taken on an additional set of brands that they're going to sell, all brands that are existing, all brands that are resold somewhere else, don't really get that as a complete strategy, is an organisation that actually gives back to its consumers and does the right thing. So I'm concerned, to say the least, what the spectacle of Christmas adverts are going to be this year. They were very poignant and thoughtful last year when we saw them. It is a time for us to have a bit of joy and fun, I suppose. But whatever the spokesperson for the brands underneath it have to deliver the right message for the consumer day in, day out. That's the plea.
Yeah, no, totally get that. Let's have a look at Banksy and the Observer, Gemma. Are you a fan? Are you a Banksy fan? You are, you're nodding.
I am.
Are you?
No,
I just wish he'd put the spray cans away and sort of let walls be walls.
Do you? You see, I completely don't. He's welcome to come and do a piece of art on the front of my house. I really enjoy his art. And actually, also the people that have it imposed upon them, admittedly, it's incredibly valuable. I'm sure it would add value to those buildings. But I do understand. I think the thing is that spray can art has always been associated with graffiti. It's just vandalism if you just go with a silly tag on something. But with Banksy, I feel it is different. The art is really well thought about. It's always poignant. It makes a point, and it always works with the environment. And in this case, he's been going around Norfolk and Suffolk, and he's been having a spraycation. And I love the mystique behind Banksy as well. Nobody knows who he is.
It's very clever. It is certainly clever. We're out of time. We'll see you two in an hour.